Between things like the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Dark Knight dominating our lives in the 2000s, it's easy to forgive yourself if you missed a few classics, especially when some of those classics are cult films that are often overlooked. We'll look at 7 of the most iconic yet underrated cult classics of the 2000s. For this list, the projects must be non-mainstream outings that were cult favorites at the time or have grown into nostalgic faves. All but one of the films has a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes, which shows that critics weren't feeling the films around the time of the release. The irony comes in the form of most having a positive audience score, indicating most of the cult classic statuses that these films have gained since their release. We want to celebrate films that many don't remember or overlooked in the times when films, blockbusters, and indies were hitting new heights. Now, let's check out 7 of these movies. Number 7, Running Scared. You could make a list just of underrated Paul Walker movies from the 2000s. The man knew how to pick a future cult classic, from his hilariously campy work in Too Fast, Too Furious to the trucker slasher Joyride. You were sure to get a good performance from this actor, but many don't even know his best work ever. No turn is more impressive than his work in the 2006 genre-bending experience Running Scared. What Paul Walker cooks up in this twisted tale is delightful, with his usual charm taking a backseat to a genuinely gritty side. The whole film could be perfectly described with the word gritty, but not in that cringe way that we think of it now. Running Scared is possibly the best post-Sin City, let's tell a dark story in a dark world example, taking everything that worked in that film, but adding a unique fairy tale-like quality. It's a smash-mouth, brutal little film that far too many people ignored to star such a great 2000 star. Number 6. Spun. Drug movies were all the rage at one point. If there was a popular drug, someone centered a film around it, but no one captured the feeling of being on something quite like Spun. The dizzying madness can be overwhelming, but great talents hold it together. Director Jonas Åkerlund put together what can only be described as the meth-loving sister of Requiem for a Dream. You get the same drugs are bad outcome in that movie, but this one puts you through the ringer in a far less depressing way. It's not easily digestible, but no drug movie should be. You want to be challenged. You want the highs and the lows. Again, there's some top tier acting carrying everything together. A pre-comeback Mickey Rourke turning in some great work along with John Leguizamo, but the true stars are the duo of Jason Schwartzman and Brittany Murphy, two 2000s actors who gave all of their best in this overlooked movie called Spun. Number 5, Southland Tales. Some of us didn't need a Cannes cut to appreciate the madness and the beauty of Southland Tales. While no one would call this movie a masterpiece, you can't help but sit in glee as Richard Kelly's magnum opus takes control of your brain. Southland Tales is as grand and over the top as any of the blockbusters at the time, but the film gets a polarizing reception for its dark comedy and satirical nature. As many of the movies found here can be challenging, this one challenges you on what to expect from a blockbuster. It's unique in its ability to offer something familiar yet so foreign. With its star-studded cast and strange story, films like this are almost commonplace. There's a few Oscar winners that could have been very different without the help of this Dwayne Johnson and Sarah Michelle Gellar movie, paving the way for genuinely weird blockbusters. Number 4. Primer. Surprisingly, the most obscure film on this list is the one with a positive score on Rotten Tomatoes. Primer is an indie sci-fi film from 2004 that many people don't remember, which is a shame because it's one of the most challenging films of the decade. Basically, this whole list is a love letter to uncompromising filmmakers. We see Shane Carruth storm the indie scene with this strange offering, giving sci-fi fans something outside of the plentiful blockbusters we were getting at the time. It still also surprisingly holds up, even with decades behind it. We also see Carruth sacrifice no scientific technicalities for the audience. Yeah, this is just pure chaos. This 2004 Sundance darling is long overdue for its mainstream reevaluation, and we also need to challenge filmmakers to re-challenge their audiences, use Primer as an example, and continue making science madness again, outside of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Number 5. Wet Hot American Summer. Looking at this whole list, what makes Wet Hot American Summer stand out is its pure comedic nature compared to all the other genre explorative options here. It's unabashedly a comedy, and it does it very well. Also, the film stands out for its sheer insane lineup of actors. We're talking about legends and icons. Outside of David Hyde Pierce and Janine Garofalo, who already had a career, the untapped potential of actors they found at this time is absolutely insane. A small portion of that list includes Paul Rudd, Amy Poehler, Elizabeth Banks, and Bradley Cooper. It's a genuinely all-star cast right before they all became megastars. One casting director has never had so much history in Hollywood in their jobs. If you haven't seen this ridiculous masterpiece, prepare for non-stop laughs and one of the most joyous looks at what makes indie comedies so special. Not to sound like that guy, but we don't get movies like this anymore. Wet Hot American Summer is a time capture of a better time in film. Number 6. Cecil B Demented. Without John Waters, no list of cult films at any time period would be complete. He's a master of making movies only a few people love, or something that we will all revisit later with more admiration. Sadly, Cecil B Demented hasn't really got that treatment yet, earning the status of a forgotten John Waters movie. This is another film that includes a stacked cast. It's hard to believe that this doesn't have the same acclaim of his other works like Hairspray and Serial Mom. It's meta at the height of meta filmmaking, it's a love letter to cinema, and also features some outlandish yet accessible moments. How was this not a bigger hit, even within the space of indie film nerds? In what I feel like could be John Waters' most mainstream outing, the action-filled meta-Hollywood comedy never got its due. Cecil B Demented is an unforgettable moment once you see it. Now, take this time to revisit what could be Waters does Quentin Tarantino. Number 7. Bamboozled. Speaking of legendary filmmakers, we cannot get any more iconic than Spike Lee. That makes the Rotten Tomatoes score for what many longtime fans consider one of his best works fairly confusing. If you haven't seen Bamboozled, rectify that right now. For what Spike Lee fans call pitch-perfect satire, others have often called it too heavy-handed. While that's subjective, it's hard to argue how well acted and crafted the film turned out. It features some heavy hitters in the acting department and has a very distinct look for the time. Once you see Bamboozled, it becomes one of the films that never leaves your mind. Thankfully, out of all these films, this seemingly got the best critical reevaluation in recent years, even ending up in the Criterion Collection in 2020. If any filmmaker knows how to make a film that grows with you over time, it would be Spike Lee. Thank you so much for joining us and making it to the end of the video. What is your favorite 2000s underrated movie? Did we miss out on a cult classic that defined this era? Share your feelings down in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to Flickering Myth and give us a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Alright everyone, let's talk about cult classics down below.